You know what's weird? Every single year, millions of people stand at the edge of the Grand Canyon, snap their photos, and leave thinking they've seen it all. But what if I told you that beneath your feet, while you're taking those selfies, there are chambers that have been deliberately erased from public record, coordinates that used to exist on official maps, but vanished overnight, tunnels that were documented over a century ago, and then suddenly, the entire story disappeared like it never happened. I'm not talking about some internet conspiracy theory. I'm talking about documented evidence, newspaper archives, and patterns so obvious that once you see them, you can't unsee them. This is the Grand Canyon, 446 miles of carved earth that attracts 6 million visitors every year. But here's the thing nobody tells you: less than 1% of it is actually accessible to the public. The rest? Restricted, off limits. And when you start asking why, that's when things get really interesting. Let's start with something concrete. April 5th, 1909. The Arizona Gazette publishes a front-page story that would change everything if anyone had paid attention. The headline talks about explorations funded by the Smithsonian Institution. The article describes two explorers, Kinkaid and Professor S.A, who discovered something impossible inside the Grand Canyon. According to the detailed report, they found a network of underground tunnels and chambers carved deep into the canyon walls. But these weren't natural caves. The article describes passageways that were clearly constructed, with smooth walls and right angles. Inside these chambers, the explorers allegedly found relics that didn't match anything in North American archaeology. We're talking about artifacts that looked Egyptian, Asian, even Tibetan. Stone tablets with hieroglyphics, copper instruments, mummies, a massive carved idol. The article even provides specific details about the location, somewhere in the Marble Canyon section, accessible only by boat. Now, here's where it gets strange. After this article ran, nothing. Complete silence. No follow-up stories. No additional expeditions. No museum exhibitions of these incredible finds. The Smithsonian Institution, when asked about this discovery over the years, has consistently stated they have no record of this expedition, no record of Kinkaid or Jordan, and no artifacts matching this description. The story just vanished. But the newspaper article is real. You can look it up right now in archived records. It existed. It was published in a legitimate newspaper. So what happened? Did two explorers make up an elaborate hoax detailed enough to fool experienced journalists? Did the newspaper fabricate the entire thing for sales? Or did someone decide this discovery was too sensitive to share with the public? Let's talk about maps for a second, because this is where things get really interesting. If you compare historical topographical maps of the Grand Canyon from different decades, you'll notice something odd. There are areas, specific coordinates, that appear on older maps, but are completely absent from newer ones. We're not talking about minor surveying corrections. We're talking about marked cave systems and geological features that were documented and then erased. Geologists and canyon researchers have pointed this out for years. One particular area in the restricted zone has what locals call phantom coordinates, places that old-timers swear existed on their hiking maps from the 70s and 80s. But if you try to find those same reference points on current maps, they're gone. Just blank canyon wall. The National Park Service controls access to 99% of the Grand Canyon. Of the roughly 1.2 million acres, tourists can access established trails and viewpoints, but the vast majority is closed. Some of this makes sense. Safety concerns, ecological protection, preservation of delicate areas. But then there are zones marked restricted for administrative purposes. No further explanation. Try to get a permit to explore some of these areas, and you'll hit a wall of red tape that makes no sense for a geological formation. We're talking about areas that require clearances beyond standard park permits. Some require federal approval. Why would hiking into a particular canyon corridor require federal clearance? Here's something most people don't know. The Grand Canyon contains one of the most complete sedimentary records on planet Earth. We're looking at rock layers that span nearly 2 billion years of geological history. It's literally a timeline carved into stone. Geologists study these layers to understand everything from ancient climates to extinction events. But there's a problem. The sedimentary record has gaps, big ones. There are missing layers that should be there but aren't. Scientists call these unconformities, places where millions of years of rock are just gone. Now, unconformities happen naturally through erosion and geological processes. But the pattern of missing layers in the Grand Canyon has puzzled researchers for decades. Some of these gaps occur in places where erosion doesn't make sense as an explanation. It's like pages torn out of a history book, and we don't know what was written on them. Let me tell you about something called the Isis Temple and the surrounding formations. In the northern section of the Grand Canyon, there are dozens of buttes and formations with names like Tower of Ra, Cheops Pyramid, Buddha Temple, and Brahma Temple. Why do geological formations in Arizona have Egyptian and Asian names? The official explanation is that Clarence Dutton, a geologist who surveyed the canyon in the 1880s, liked mythological names and started a naming tradition. Fair enough. But here's the thing. Dutton specifically named an area the Egyptian area, and many of these formations are in restricted zones today. The Isis Temple area, for example, is extremely difficult to access without special permits. Is it just coincidence that formations with Egyptian names happen to be in the most restricted parts of the canyon, and that a newspaper article from 1909 described Egyptian artifacts found in secret chambers? There are rangers who've worked at the Grand Canyon for decades, and if you get them talking off the record, some will tell you stories. Stories about areas they've been told never to discuss with tourists. Chambers they've seen that aren't on any official cave registry. Colleagues who explored certain areas and were quietly transferred shortly after. These aren't wild conspiracy theorists. These are career Park Service employees who love the canyon and have dedicated their lives to it. But there's a line they know not to cross. Questions they know not to ask. And when you press them, you see it in their eyes. They want to talk, but they can't, or won't. Let's talk about cave systems for a minute because this is crucial. The Grand Canyon has hundreds of documented caves. Most are small, insignificant alcoves, but there are major cavern systems that run deep into the canyon walls. The thing is, most of these aren't open to the public, and many aren't even publicly documented. In 2008, a team of researchers discovered a previously unknown cave system that extended over 3 miles into the Redwall limestone layer. 3 miles. And this wasn't in some remote unexplored area. This was in a section that had supposedly been thoroughly surveyed for over a century. If a 3-mile cave system could hide in plain sight, what else is down there? There's a pattern. When you start researching Grand Canyon mysteries, you'll find old documents, old photographs, old survey reports that mention things. Specific things. Cave entrances, unusual formations, archaeological anomalies. But when you try to follow up on these references, you hit dead ends. The documents are reclassified. The photographs are removed from public archives. The survey reports are redacted. It's not that the information was never there. It's that it's been systematically removed. And before you think this is just standard government bureaucracy, remember that we're talking about a national park. These are supposed to be public lands with public information. Why would geological data need to be classified? Here's something you can verify yourself. Go to the official Grand Canyon National Park website and look at their cave inventory. Now compare that to historical geological surveys from the early 1900s. You'll find references to dozens of significant cave systems that simply aren't mentioned anymore. One survey from 1923 describes a cavern entrance in the Marble Canyon area, roughly 42 feet high and 35 feet wide, with evidence of artificial modification. That survey is still in the archives, but that cave, not on any current map, not mentioned in any current park literature. It's like it never existed. The Hopi people, whose ancestral lands include areas around the Grand Canyon, have oral traditions about their emergence into this world. According to their beliefs, their ancestors emerged from underground, from a previous world below this one. The Hopi word for Grand Canyon translates roughly to place of emergence. They have specific sites in the canyon that are sacred, places they believe are entrances to the underworld. The National Park Service recognizes some of these sites and restricts access out of respect for Hopi religious beliefs. But some researchers have noted that certain restricted areas overlap perfectly with locations described in the 1909 newspaper article. Is the restriction really about religious respect, or is there something else being protected? Let's talk about the Smithsonian for a second, because their role in this keeps coming up. The Smithsonian Institution is one of the most respected research organizations in the world. Their museums hold millions of artifacts. Their research has shaped our understanding of history and science. But the Smithsonian also has a reputation for something else. They have warehouses full of artifacts that never see the light of day. Items that were collected, cataloged, and then locked away. Former employees have described vast storage facilities where thousands of items sit in boxes, never studied, never displayed, never even photographed for records. The official explanation is lack of resources. They simply have more material than they can process or exhibit. But some of these stored items are incredibly significant. Why would you lock away evidence that could rewrite history? In 1964, something interesting happened. Large sections of the Grand Canyon were suddenly reclassified. Areas that had been open to researchers were restricted. Several ongoing archaeological surveys were abruptly terminated. No official explanation was given beyond administrative restructuring. But if you look at what else was happening in 1964, it's interesting. That was the height of the Cold War. Underground facilities were being constructed all over the American Southwest. Rumors circulated about secret military installations being built into canyon walls and mountainsides. Is it possible the Grand Canyon restrictions had nothing to do with archaeology and everything to do with Cold War secrecy? Maybe, but that doesn't explain why the restrictions remained after the Cold War ended. It doesn't explain why, in 2015, additional areas were added to the restricted list. There are explorers, modern ones, who've tried to investigate these mysteries. Some have hiked into restricted areas, risking federal charges, to see what's there. A few have documented their findings online before being forced to take the content down. One explorer claimed to have found a tunnel entrance matching the description from the 1909 article. He posted photographs showing a carved entrance partially hidden by rockfall. Within 48 hours, his website was down, his social media accounts were suspended, and according to him, he received a visit from federal agents warning him about trespassing on protected lands. His photographs? Gone. He won't talk about it anymore, but others saved his images before they disappeared, and those images are still circulating if you know where to look. Here's what we know for certain. The Grand Canyon is not fully explored. Despite over a century of scientific study, vast areas remain unsurveyed. The rock layers contain gaps in the geological record that scientists can't fully explain. There are documented cave systems that appear on old maps, but not new ones. There are restricted zones with no clear justification. There was a detailed newspaper article in 1909 describing an impossible discovery that was never followed up on. Indigenous peoples have oral traditions describing underground worlds access through the canyon, and anyone who digs too deep into these questions seems to hit a wall of silence. So what's really going on? Are there ancient chambers hidden in the Grand Canyon containing evidence of a lost civilization? Did the Smithsonian discover something in the early 1900s that contradicted established historical narratives? Are there natural cavern systems so extensive and dangerous that they've been sealed for public safety? Or is there a completely different explanation, something we haven't even considered? The truth is, we don't know. And maybe that's what makes this so compelling. We have pieces of a puzzle, but we can't see the full picture because some of the pieces are being deliberately kept from us. The Grand Canyon stands there, ancient and silent, holding secrets in its depths. Millions of people visit every year, stand at its edge, marvel at its beauty, and never realize that beneath their feet might be answers to questions we didn't even know to ask. What else is hidden in America's most visited natural wonder? What other stories have been erased from public record? And most importantly, why? The Grand Canyon isn't just a geological marvel. It might be the keeper of our forgotten history. And until those restricted zones are opened, Until those erased coordinates are explained, until someone provides real answers to these documented questions, the mystery remains. 6 million visitors a year, and not one of them knows the full truth about what they're really looking at.